This is the beginning of the change of your life. Welcome to Too True to Tell, why what we don't say is leading us down the path of stolen vision. Hi, I'm Linda Williams. I'm a doctoral candidate at Capella University. I have a Master's of Social Work, certification in alcohol and drug abuse, and I have a degree in organizational leadership. I'm a certified Christian life coach and a certified professional life coach. Part of what you'll take away from today's lesson is how to connect your past with your purpose and leverage the pain to jumpstart your God-given destiny. You'll learn to take control over a pattern of negative relationships and empower the life you dream of living. And you'll learn how to gain control by tapping into your personal control center. You will recognize the vision you lost and run with it. So why does it matter whether we tell the stories that we're keeping hidden inside? Well, if you remember the movie To Kill the Messenger, you may remember that famous line, "Some stories are just too true to tell." That's a statement uttered by a DC operative when confronted with evidence of the Iran-Contra conspiracy. Now, the circumstances surrounding that statement in the movie are not as important as the reality it reveals. In the movie, this was a veiled warning to news reporter David Webb that he had better keep what he knew to himself or pay the consequences. And pay the consequences he did. Now, where our own lives and stories are concerned, shame and denial have their hands over our soulish mouths, instilling and ingraining fear that if we reveal what is hidden, the backlash will be too much for us to bear. We all have stories. We have stories about our past. We have stories we have tell, stories we never tell. We even have forgotten stories. Good or bad, these stories are the scripts by which we live our lives. They cloud our vision and drive every single decision we make in every aspect of our lives. They inform how we interpret reality and truth. Our lying past have become the perpetual stories of our lives. We have become clueless actors in a cosmic play in which we keep reciting the same scripts that repeatedly lead us into the same old drama in relationships, our spiritual lives, and even in our careers. It's a sad commentary that we replay these scripts, robotically moving through each scene, unaware that we're carrying the very thing it takes to rewrite our stories. We're like victims of a cosmic soap opera vortex. We repeat the same mistakes, hating and being shocked by the inevitable results. It's living in the past or being held hostage to someone else's past. The end result, a long, hard journey down the path of stolen vision. That road only leads to a dead end, and the signpost reads, "Destiny denied." The enemy has one core strategy. It comes in many disguises, many ways. The core strategy is keeping us off focus. Keep us off focus so we can't catch the vision. Keep us off focus so we don't recognize how negative life experiences have twisted us up. Focus, focus, focus. He understands that if he can steal our focus, he can steal our destiny. Why is it so important that he keeps us off focus? It's important because as long as he has stolen our focus, I went around here blind. I was totally blind. I had no idea that I was 80% blind. No clue whatsoever because it was such a slow progression that I didn't realize that I wasn't able to see. And until they replaced the lenses in my eyes, I didn't see a lot of things. When I walked in my house, I saw stains in the carpet I didn't know were there, cobwebs I didn't know was there. As long as he can keep us off focus, he's stolen our vision. We can't focus. We have no vision. What the Bible say? You have to have that vision. He even tells you to write it down. Well, this vision is what Satan is after. The enemy is after that. Steal our focus, keep us off focus from how all of the pain we've been through in life has morphed us out of our character, that we can't really catch that vision. And if he steals our vision, then he's stolen our purpose. And if he's stolen our purpose, he has stolen our destiny. Joyce Meyer already established that our mind is a battlefield, and that's because the Bible clearly says that our mind is God's natural-born enemy. It can't understand spiritual things and matters of our purpose, mission, and destiny. We have to connect with God through our spirits, which are inside of our souls. So if our spirits have to come through our souls, which is where all of these scars from the past exist, then there's going to be a challenge with respect to our spirit informing how we think. To some extent, we have to handle our own business in that regard. But in order to do that on this battlefield, we have to understand where the enemy is lurking and how the enemy has devised his battle strategy. Because the mind is the battlefield, we're going to use military terms to explain this process. We've talked about how we're off focus. Well, just like in military situations, there are what we call minefields, and we know that these minefields can be full of improvised explosive devices, or IEDs. They're designed to detonate without the soldier or the troops understanding that they're stepping on it. So they don't know they're in trouble until they step on these minefields, and it causes major physical damage and a lot of casualties. Well, on this minefield, in this battlefield, we have what we call mind fields. And these minefields lurk in the enemy territory where he's got different things he's orchestrated. So he's the consummate playwright, in other words. He's doing everything he can to get you to forget or not to know that you got the power to rewrite your story, to rewrite your life, that you don't have to go by what he's scripting for you. So these minefields are full of what we call irrational emotional discharges. Okay? These irrational emotional discharges aren't necessarily always a blow up, a crying jag. An irrational emotional discharge is really us acting out of the scripts that we've learned over time. It might be some negativity we learned, or some false thinking we learned growing up from our parents. It could be the things we've said inside. Every time you take a blow to your soul and you take that hurt and that pain internally, even without you knowing it, you've already decided that you're not going to let that happen again. And in order not to let that happen again, then you go all the way to the wrong end of the scale and say, well, I'm not this and I'm never that, and I'm never going to let anybody treat me like that. And what those things are, when they come up in your life, those are considered irrational emotional discharges. It occurs without your knowing it. So what the consummate playwright does as the enemy, he's orchestrating the situation here, circumstance there, because he knows what's going to trigger you to act out of that negative script. As long as he can keep you acting out of that negative script, he knows you're not going to be able to develop the vision to see that, whoops, I don't have to do this. I can rewrite my story. So these irrational emotional discharges are always tied to something we went through in our past. And what they do is they cause us to react in the here and now based on how we drew these scripts in our past, based on responding to something in the past. And I can tell you how this played out in my life. There was a rape that I had endured. It took me 30 years to really tell the whole full story of it. This is the primary example of telling half the story. Now, in my second marriage, I did indicate to my husband that I had been raped. But I never told him the full story about that because I felt ashamed of having let that guy in the room. I felt like that I had made my bed, I needed to lie in it. That's example one of a script that I learned as a child. I learned that if you make a decision that's your bad, you deserve the consequences. And that's how I thought about that rape. Well, some of you have heard the story of how I was called to write the book, Whose Apple Is It Anyway? And how that book took 7 years of my life to write, 7 years and 6 days to be exact. My sister had told me, Linda, you're going to write a book, but that book will only progress as you heal. And sure enough, there were times when I just could not write. I would try to force it. I would try to make it happen. I knew that it was just no anointing on it. Each time I experienced writer's block like that, without fail, there was some other level of healing I had to go through, and this is how it played out. Had a boyfriend, we had this game, and what would happen is I would tell him something that happened to me in my past, and it would be weird stuff that would happen, and then we would talk about it seriously, and then we'd laugh about it. And so it got to the point where he would think, what's it going to be next? Well, one day we were getting out of the car, and I told him, I said, I was raped, yada, yada. I told him the whole story. I let the guy in my room. He had sodomized me, left me bleeding, and he asked me a simple question. Did you go to the doctor? It stopped me in my tracks. I had never in 30 years thought about going to the doctor. So it kind of knocked me off my loop, because it was like, that's not the script I'm acting out of. And I stopped right there where I stood, and then I jumped back into my script. Well, why should I tell the doctor? I wasn't going to tell the doctor anything. I didn't want him to know I'd done something that stupid. And that man never said anything to me there. But within a few weeks, he had the opportunity to tell me this. Linda, I wanted to tell you that was messed up. At what point does that man own what he did to you? At what point is it his bad in that? You're saying it's all your fault. You made your bed to lie in it. You hadn't even thought about going to get some health care for yourself. He said, you know what, Linda, your responsibility in that began and ended at the point where you invited him over and let him in that door. Everything he did to you from there on in is stuff he's planting in his own harvest, and he has to own that wrong he did to you. It was the first time I learned that I had to separate myself from what happened to me, recognize healthfully where I made decisions that led me into that, and then be able to let go enough to recognize that, look, I didn't ask that guy to rape me. I didn't know he was a rapist when I let him in the room. And then I could walk through writing some more on the book. But as I wrote more on the book, I recognized how I had become the wrong that was done to me. I had become that wrong. I thought I deserved that rape. I thought I set myself up for that. I thought I needed to suck it up and just move on. Don't you know I was moving on, but I was way off my path of purpose. 30 years, you guys, that I didn't talk about that rape fully. Now, let me tell you how the IEDs occurred. Aside from the fact that I walked around with that self-loathing for years, let me tell you, this is going to seem extreme, but this is just truth, y'all. I don't know what else to tell you. Out of that pain, out of me identifying with that pain, internalizing that pain, saying I deserved that pain, too ashamed to tell people that I'd made a dumb mistake, I wound up marrying a rapist and didn't know it. That's how extreme. That seems extreme. That's just truth, you guys. But this is how it plays out in our lives. I chose to be in a 16-year marriage with a man that not only molested my child, okay, but he was out there raping other women. He'll never see the light of day again because now he's in prison. But this is how this plays out in our life. Now, during that marriage, he had to come to me for some reason. He said, Linda, when that guy raped you, did you let him in the room? Now, I should have known something was wrong. Here's a in-your-face IED. I snapped him up. I said, no. And I mean, I must have had venom in my face and in my voice where he knew, don't touch that anymore. Now, I should have known many years before. Now, I would say that was a good 6-7 years before I admitted this rape to the guy that helped me realize it wasn't my fault. But I should have known. Now, that was an irrational emotional discharge. My husband touched on something about which I felt shame, that I felt I deserved, and I didn't want to talk about it. He knew not to touch that subject again, but guess what? I wasn't going to make it and move into my destiny until and unless I told that story exactly how it went down, and then I could free myself from it because I recognized where I was wrong, where I made a wrong decision, but by virtue of making that wrong decision, didn't render me deserving to be raped until I was bleeding. Now, internalizing that, what did I do? I wound up marrying a guy that was a rapist. Thankfully, during the last 7 years of that marriage, he never touched me sexually. Okay. But at the same time, it was a year or so after that that he got caught by the police doing this thing with raping these prostitutes. I don't understand what was going on. I really was tortured that he wouldn't deal with me sexually, okay, during the marriage. But as I look back, I'm grateful to God that he did. I don't know what dude was picking up out there. God is good. Even in the middle of that, he protected me from that. Now, I wanted to be completely transparent with you guys about this because I want you to see that, look, number one, I'm not drawing on all the degrees I got hanging on the doggone wall. That's paper. That represents a milestone in my academic career. I didn't write Whose Apple Is It Anyway based on those degrees on the wall. Because the truth be told, as I was acquiring those degrees on the wall, I was learning the psychology of the things I'm telling you here. But I didn't identify with it. I didn't know. Scripts, I didn't want to hear about a dadgum, I forget what they call it, schema. I read the book. I refused to use the term in any of my papers because I felt like you all are just trying to overcomplicate something that's got to be simpler than that. Not recognizing that every decision I made and everything I went through in my life, my here and now life back then, was completely related to the dynamics I was learning. We are clueless. Your stories matter. Why do they matter? They matter because they're tripping you out. Now let's talk about IEDs. So let's say that you go off in an IED. Somebody says blase splee to you, okay? Well, all day long you swearing up and down they said blase splism. Now, everybody around you heard blase splee, but you often running down some rabbit trail based on something in your past. You're all upset. You're not dealing with reality in that condition. We're not dealing with reality in that condition. When we have these stories we will not tell, we are living by those internal scripts, whether we know it or not, and they are leading us down this path of stolen vision because they're leading us down a path where we do not see clearly. You cannot make a decent decision in your life, your career, your relationships if you're not dealing from a standard of truth, which is not what we're dealing from when we've got these hidden things inside of us. So that being said, now that we know that what the enemy will do, I studied this thing. I wanted to look up battle terms, and we know what reconnaissance is. Reconnaissance is what Moses had. The spies go into the promised land to see what was there, who was there, and come back and tell them what they saw. That was a covert reconnaissance mission. But in military terms, they have something called reconnaissance by fire. Okay? Reconnaissance by fire. Now, that means, okay, I'm not going to put my hiney in danger and go behind enemy lines, try to figure out where you're cowering or where you're hiding and where you're planning an attack on us. What I'm going to do is I'm just going to fire off some rounds and let you tell on yourself. We'll know where you are when we get through throwing a few grenades here and there and pulling out that machine gun on your hiney. Okay? And then you tell on yourself. That's exactly the strategy that the enemy uses with us, where we've got these hidden agendas, these hidden scripts. These things are driving every wrong decision that we're making. It's the reason we get caught up in multiple relationships that are unaffirming. It's a reason why we're sitting up praying for that man, praying for that woman that God has for us. And we might have decided we're willing to wait. We might be deciding we're going to wait for God. But all of the wishing, waiting, and praying is not getting us there because of this very dynamic. IEDs. Let me tell you why else this happens. Another reason this happens is because We already know that if you're on your path of purpose, the man or woman God has for you is there. Every resource you need to accomplish your mission in the master plan is there. Everybody that you're a divine connection for and everybody who's a divine connection for you is along that path. Guess what? If you going down a rabbit tail and you're going down the path of stolen vision, you're not going to get any of that. And all of the praying, wishing, and waiting you do is not going to make a difference because God has already positioned that along your path of purpose. He is not flipping that script just to help you to get what you're praying for. What he wants us to do is deal with the internal dynamics that are keeping us from being on our purposeful path and realizing and having the vision that he has given us as our spiritual birthright. So if you are off on a rabbit trail and say you just by some stroke of blessing, you run across somebody who's supposed to be a divine connection for you. But because of these things you're not talking about and these false scripts that's driving and the decision you're making, then you might really offend that person or push them off or not even recognize them for the blessing they are. And now what have you got? You've already X'd out a divine connection. What's worse? Let's talk to you all who have ministries. What is worse, okay, is that if you have a ministry, trust me, if you've been through some junk, God won't that be part of your ministry. That means that you've been through some junk. I want to use you as a divine connection to facilitate the healing of others. If you're all locked up inside like I was about that rape, then you're not going to be able to relate to somebody that's in the middle of that pain because you got the defenses up and you don't want to deal with your own. You know that if you relate to them there, then that's going to bring up stuff you don't want to deal with on some subconscious level. And now there's somebody standing there that God put you in their life by divine direction to help them out. You can't even see it. And this is one of the reasons why ministries go by the wayside. This is one of the reasons why we get in our ministries and then we get to a point where we feel like we're not growing. We feel like that something's missing. We're praying and asking God what it is, but are we prepped? Do we have the courage it takes to face the things he's trying to show us in ourselves? Because as long as we're in the condition where we're living out of fake, false scripts and the lies of our past, the lies that our past are telling us, we're not going to hear God. We're not going to hear him. In fact, if God put somebody in your life to show you that, you will be so highly offended that it'll be all their fault, not yours. Trust you me, been there, done that. So we want to be aware of the minefields. We want to be aware of reconnaissance by fire. We want to be aware of how our own irrational emotional discharges are really holding us back and clouding our vision. And by doing so, we will already be aware of the enemy battle plan. This is the deal. On anybody's battlefield, if your enemy has a higher vantage point than you do, and they can see you coming, you're already in a one-down position and likely to lose that battle. And I want to remind you that with the children of Israel, they lost some, they won some, and when they lost it, it was all at the hands of their own stinking thinking. So the war was inevitable. The losses were unnecessary. And so it is in our lives. Now, this is why it matters. Now, we know that Jeremiah 29:11 details God's plan for our lives, and we're born with everything we need to accomplish it. Our characters, our personalities, our skills, our talents, our abilities are all devised for our specific purpose in his master plan. Now, I call this our toolkit. It's our spiritual birthright because we come here with it. We come here with a purpose. We have a right to what God gave us in order to accomplish that in the master plan. But here's the rub. Those tools are only as effective. They are only as powerful as we are the people God created us to be. The spiritual truth is that our purpose and destiny are immutable. They're born out of the heart of an immutable God. Because of this, each of our destinies is etched in eternal stone. That's God's plan for us. Destiny, therefore, cannot deny you. These stories cause us to deny destiny. Because as long as we are caught up in the false scripts, we cannot see our way back to our own path of purpose. Now, your path of purpose leads straight to God's creative purpose for you, your destiny. Along that path is every divine connection, every purposeful resource, and every bit of your destiny. This is why it's so important to recognize how the past has affected our purposeful vision. If we can't face it, God can't fix it. Attitude. One description of attitude is it's the position of aircraft or spacecraft relative to a frame of reference. That frame of reference is the ground or the horizon. Now, if the pilot's frame of reference is off, it can be crash and burn. In this analogy, the ground is truth. It's truth, it's reality. Our attitude is the position of the plane or how we are positioned as we go through life. Now, just like that ground is not moving and budging to accommodate for pilot error, neither is truth moving or changing to accommodate our being off in our frames of reference. So attitude is very important because whatever your attitude is really is based on everything you've been through in life and how well you dealt with or did not deal with it. Your attitude is you playing out your life on a cosmic stage. And your attitude is determining how you play out your life on that cosmic stage. And it's fully informed by how well you dealt with things as you came through life. Whether you told the stories you needed to tell in order to move through and heal. Whether or not you're holding grudges, bitterness, unforgiveness with somebody in the past. So, it determines our life direction, okay? It can have a negative impact on destiny when our frames of reference are off. It propels us toward or away from our destiny. That there's no sideways, no shortcuts. You're either moving toward destiny in your life or you're moving away from it. When you're moving away from it, you're generally stuck in some area. But the good news is all of this can be changed by a simple change in our focus. Our attitudes are propelling us 100 miles an hour down life's runway. The plane is nose toward or away from destiny. If we don't recalibrate our emotional instruments, we'll wind up staring down the end of our lives, a payload of unfinished business in tow, all because we didn't know that all it took was a shift in focus to alter our direction. Let's talk about perception versus perspective. Now, this has been misunderstood. They are not the same. You perceive things through the lenses of your past experiences, and you perceive things through the lenses of how you dealt with or didn't deal with bad experiences in your life. We're going to focus on the bad experiences because that has the negative impact on you. But you can also perceive things through the lenses of good experiences. But let's focus on where traumatic or painful life events have affected our vision. Perception is your interpretation of an event. Now imagine everybody sitting around a conference table. This rock drops in on it. Everybody's got a different perception of this rock. Some feel like it reminds them of fishing trips with their grandfather. Another person is curious. They want to crack it open and see if there are crystals inside. Yet another person backs off and freaks out because they feel it's unsanitary and it needs to be taken off the table. Well, the event is the rock dropped on the table. Everything that goes forth from that, based on everybody's perception of it, is a different story. So each person is looking at the rock on the conference table through a different lens. They're looking at it through their past experiences, their internal expectations, past knowledge, things your parents told you, good or bad, things that might have been negative messaging, and your own self concept. So it's how you see things. Perspective, however, is the conclusion you draw from your perceptions of an event. It's your point of view, your worldview, your frame of reference. And out of that frame of reference, you're drawing conclusions based on how you see things. Note here, like the rock on the conference table, everybody's concluding different things based on how they see things. But everybody's seeing things differently. So where is the truth in that? The truth is that the event, the rock on the table, is what it is. It's a rock on the table. The truth is that everybody's perceptions of that rock on the table will result in different conclusions and different decisions. Now, some of those decisions were really based on lying perceptions. The decisions, some of the perceptions and perspectives of the people looking at the rock on the conference table were different. Now, they're entitled to their own opinions, as everyone is, but in order to regain our vision and really accomplish what we're here on earth to do, we have to hold those perceptions and those perspectives up to truth. Remember the plane. Ground not moving to account for pilot error. Truth is not moving to account for our misperceptions. So these lies are secret lies, lies that are going on inside us, lies we're unconscious of. I'm never going to get hurt like that again. I'm going to hurt them before they hurt me. The lies drive how we get along in relationships. The lies drive what decisions we make about who we're in relationship with. The lies are really holding us back in our ministries because they tell us that the stories that we don't tell can't be told, because there will be some major backlash. It tells us everything that it takes to keep us off focus. These lies are insidious, and you may not know they exist. Now, the expectations that we have, I'm not talking about the good expectations. We know that the Bible tells us to call things that be not as though they were, as part of the whole faith dynamic. And generally, we're thinking of good things on those levels. We might be expecting consciously that we are going to have a happy life, that we're going to live the life that we really want to. Whether we see it or not, we might even have conscious expectations of that. But what happens is that the internal expectation that we subconsciously have as a result of getting hurt in the past are on our backs. And when the Bible says that you reap what you sow, we have to also remember that Paul said, may you prosper even as your soul prospers, because as goes the soul, so goes your life. And the internal expectations that are festering in the scars that we carry in our souls from the past are really what's driving what many of us are seeing in our lives right now, which are many times the complete opposite of what we're consciously expecting, wishing, hoping for. These expectations become heavy on our backs because we're not aware of it. We're still reaping in our lives based on these internal scripts that we've written for ourselves, feeling like we're never going to let anybody hurt us again. It can really be as profound as our thinking that because Uncle Joe molested us when we were 7, that all men are evil, that all men mean to hurt us. Now, we know that all men are not molesters. We know that all men are not out to hurt us, but that's the reality and the truth of the matter. What our lives are being lived by, what's scripting our lives are the internal expectations that you're never going to let that happen to you again. And so you're going to do whatever you need to do to be in control of your life. Sometimes trauma like that can lead to people being OCD, obsessive compulsive disorder. Sometimes it can lead to people having really bad control issues in their lives and in their relationships. Many times it results in people having a real problem with authority. And as long as we have a problem with authority, we're never going to move into our destinies, because God is a God of ordered purpose, and everything is done orderly, and he tells us that we have to honor our authorities. So anytime that we're carrying these internal expectations in our lives, then what we're doing is drawing more negativity, because these expectations are based on us trying to protect ourselves from something that happened in the past. Well, while we're trying to protect ourselves from what happened in the past, we're in the here and now. But we have full expectation internally that that's going to happen again, or we wouldn't need these defenses going on inside of us. Expectations are a strong belief that something will happen or will be the case in the future. And if your internal expectations are off, and you're expected to be hurt again, that every man or woman's going to hurt you like the last man or woman hurt you, then you're drawing more of those negative relationships in your life. No matter what you want on a conscious level, you'll see a pattern of negative relationships. Well, this becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy, because the way it goes is this: I got hurt. I've got the defenses inside me that are reading me all these expectations and lies that I've got to protect myself from every Joe that comes across my path. But all that negativity is drawing more of those negative relationships. Now, instead of recognizing that we have these internal expectations, what we do is consider every time we get in a negative relationship as an event that confirms for us what we thought, that all men are bad. Well, no, or all women are bad. Men go through this too. I'm not going to lie about it. All women are bad, or all men are bad. Okay? Well, if you're going to base your conclusions about that belief on what you're going through, maybe it's time to back up and find out what's going on inside you, the internal expectations that are driving that. Because it's not that every woman is bad. It's not that every man is bad. It's every woman or man you choose that is bad. And when we choose those negative relationships, then we go through a cycle, and then we ends up the same pattern all over again. And it tends to support our negative, unrealistic beliefs, because, well, see, now there goes again. You're just like all women. You're just like all men. And it's wrong thinking. It's wrong thinking. See, it's just like if you go to the store and you buy jelly, you throw it in your cart, you get home, you find out, oh man, I got strawberry, I meant to get grape. Well, you're not going to berate the dadgum jelly bar, and you're not going to sue the grocery store, because the truth of the matter is that whether you chose the right jelly or not, you chose the jelly. The jelly didn't choose you. Even if the jelly chose you, it didn't put itself in the cart. So this is the blame that's just a way to explain that we have choices and we get to choose. And if we repeatedly make the wrong choices, then we need to look at our internal expectations. So why is this important? It's important because there's no room on purpose road for the past. The past is a heavy weight. It's got you bent down. You can't even look up and look around. You're going in the wrong direction. There's just no room for it. And the truth of the matter is that you never know when a decision that you make is occurring at destiny's crossroads. We never know. The decisions we make in our lives, in our relationships, just everyday decisions that we make, could any one of them be occurring at a crossroads in our destiny? And we are not going to make the right choices. We are not going to move down the path of purpose if we're walking around dragging the past into our here and now. So are you ready for a change? Are you ready to take control? Are you ready to rewrite your life? If you're ready to rewrite your life, then let's get into Flip the Script 101. All it takes to rewrite your story is an act of your God-given will. The decision to change and the courage it takes to follow through. We're moving into the definitive battle strategy to disarm IEDs and these minefields before they detonate and blow up in your face. You're going to break the chains that have been holding you tied to your past and holding you back from your destiny. Before we go into the 5 steps to rewrite your life, let's make a couple of lists. The first list, and possibly one of the most important aspects of this transformation, is your list of truthful, trusted others. Now, this list may take you a while to create. It can have as few as one individual or as many as you like, but these are the things you would need to consider before you put that person on this list. You need someone you know will tell you truth without fear of a backlash. It's the human condition. We've been stuck in these lying scripts so long that to hear truth sounds so foreign, or it touches us off, and we are going to likely have a backlash. It might be an angry backlash. You might want to just ice that person off your list, period. But what you have to do is stick with this, because if you get somebody who meets all of these guidelines, you will know that you can trust this individual to tell you truth. Eventually, when we get into the rest of this plan, you'll learn how not to fly off the handle when you hear things that are definitely going to sound foreign to you, or may touch off something that's really bordering on some of the stories that we're not telling. This has to be someone you can trust with sensitive information. You have to know that you can trust this individual to keep confidences. You have to know that. So this list may take a while to create. Put it in your purse, in your back pocket, in your briefcase, wherever you need to put it, so that when someone comes to mind, you're going to write them down. Eventually, you will whittle that list down to just a few people or even one person. But again, all of these have to be evident in these individuals. It needs to be someone who has demonstrated, not just that you think will, but who has demonstrated that they have your best interests at heart. That way you can trust that they don't have a back motivation or a hidden agenda. You have to know that you can trust what they're telling you. And they cannot be judgmental. You need someone who's able and willing to hear what you have to say and can gain you accountability without being judgmental. Again, they'll tell you truth, and they don't mind dealing with the backlash. You can trust them with sensitive information. You can trust them to keep confidences. They have demonstrated that they have your best interest at heart, and they are not judgmental. Next, you're going to create your trigger list. This is a list of people, places, personality types, circumstances, and situations that just get your goat. People that dance on your last nerve. Places that might trigger an emotional response. This is going to be your secret weapon in the battle. Because once you make this list, and it'll take some time, again, just like with your list of truthful, trusted others, you need to keep this list with you, and as things come up, write them down. You will begin to see a pattern. And where you see those patterns emerge, that's a secret that's been revealed as to where the stories we're not telling have a grip on our here and now. The crux of the battle plan is the fruits philosophy. In the background of this process, you're going to be submitting to God's healing so that he can walk you through that process inside out. This is going to walk you through the battlefield because remember we talked about reconnaissance by fire? Well, the enemy is going to be on point, trying to throw everything your way once he finds out that this is the process you're following. I call this the fruits philosophy for a couple of reasons. The acronym fits. And at the same time, this is how you are going to plant a better harvest in the middle of the mess as you walk through. The first thing is flip the script. Next, recalibrate. Gain understanding. Investigate, interpret, and initiate. Trust the process. And stay tuned. Let's talk about these in a little more detail. This is how you flip the script. You've been operating out of one script up to now, and so you're automatically, like autopilot, going to just jump right into that anytime something triggers you. In that moment, you're going to deliberately decide not to do what you usually do. Flip the script on that. You're rewriting your life. You have control. And no matter how angry you are, hurt you are, whatever thing it is that's got you coming out of your emotions, you're not going to act out of those emotions. You're going to ask yourself, what am I going to do differently today than I did before? So if you're in a situation, you want to blow up or whatever, the IED wants to go off, then you need to back out of that situation some kind of way and take a minute to get yourself together so that you're not responding out of that emotion. It's going to take doing something differently to get a different result. And that's what you're going to do in this step. So after you flip the script by just refusing to respond the way you did in the past, it's time to recalibrate our instruments, so to speak. Our perceptions have been so off and so driven by the lies from our past that now it's time to kind of recalibrate our instruments as you would a compass. Rule 1 in recalibrating is do not engage negativity. Don't engage negativity in yourself and don't engage it in others. You're going to have ample opportunities as you move through this process to just get right down and dirty in the dirt with other people. But this time you can't do that. You have to decide that if it's a negative thing that's coming at you, you are not going to engage that thing. You got a decision you can make in that moment that I don't care how irritated you are with that. Don't give it any fuel. Rule 2. Beware when others trigger negativity in you. Go back to your trigger list. Write it down. Write it down. Because everything on your trigger list is going to require a game plan ahead of time to proactively address how you're going to deal with that situation when it comes up. Rule 3. Always be aware that your own perceptions could be wrong. Again, always be aware that your own perceptions could be wrong. This is where you enlist the help of your truthful, trusted others. And you'll have to learn how to tell a story without tainting it with your perspective. In other words, you're in a meeting, here we go with the blase splee again, but somebody says blase splee, you hear blase woo, and you are off and running in that old script. Well, rather than to just keep running in that direction, you have to deliberately ask others who were there. So what did you hear? I'm hearing this, and you have to be able to hear what they're telling you. This is not a time for us to be trying to tell our side of the story. Just tell them the bare facts, what you heard, double check that with them. And if it turns out that nobody else heard what you heard, then now you've got to move into the next step. Step 3, understanding. It's important to understand that our intent is not as powerful as our impact. So you've heard people do things wrong, act out, and then they say, well, that wasn't my intent, or charge it to my head, not my heart, or my heart. Well, the truth is that our best intentions will not outweigh the impact of our behaviors. If you act out of the past in a here and now situation and you ruin relationships, the damage is done. And no amount of saying that's not what I meant, that's not my intent, is going to change the impact of that behavior. This is where reap what you sow is rubber meets the road. It's important to understand how our behaviors are affecting others. Others see it, we don't. Seems like we did nothing. I used to be angry all the time. And a girlfriend of mine told me, we got to figure out why you're so angry all the time. Well, then I got angry at her because I felt like I wasn't getting any angrier than the next Joe. But in fact, she was telling me that I had serious anger issues that needed to be addressed. I wasn't hearing it at the time. Now, that anger made people act combatively toward me. I was unapproachable. People didn't know when I was going to be nice Linda or when I was going to be mean Linda. People really were afraid of me. Well, that wasn't going to help me on my path of purpose. If indeed I'm called to help people walk through their pain, if indeed that's the reason why I'm here on earth, then how can I do that when people are afraid of me? So we have to understand how our behaviors are impacting others. Next step is going to teach us how to do that. In this step, you're going to investigate, interpret, and initiate a plan. In this phase, you're seeking the perspective of your truthful, trusted others or others who were there during the event that ticked you off. In this phase, you're going to listen twice. You're going to speak half that much or not at all. This is not an opportunity to explain away your perspective or perceptions. This is an opportunity to see that from a more objective viewpoint. It'll give you a truer picture of what went on when you involve the perspective of others who either experienced the event with you or you're going to talk to your truthful, trusted others. Also, you're going to get along with God and ask the simple question, even in situations where you think you are totally right in the way that you want to respond to an incident. This is not telling you guys that people are going to always be right. Some people bring it wrong. Some people are wrong. In some situations, you have to draw the boundaries with them. But before you do, you need to get along with God and ask him, what is my major malfunction? And how should I address this in myself? This gets back to what we talked about earlier. You have to deal with the truth of the message. Sometimes it's clear, sometimes it's not. But it's always important. This is part of the healing process for you to get with God and ask the simple question, what is my major malfunction? And trust me, he's chomping at the bit to tell us. Then you're going to process that information, whatever you get from truthful, trusted others, whatever you get from others who experienced the event. You're going to process that information and ask God how to proceed from there. You're going to come from a non-emotional viewpoint in the way that you address things because it's our emotions from the past that have got us running rogue and reaping bad seed in our lives because of the way we dealt with things in the past. And remember the one time at the right time rule. This thing got me through a hellacious marriage. It helps me to get through relationships on all levels without burning bridges. Whatever you say to someone, you have lost ground. You are no longer empowered if you're repeating the same message over and over again to the same person, same situation. You can't keep talking. Sometimes you have to shut that down till you go through listening and asking God what your major malfunction is. Sometimes you have to go back and apologize. But in those situations where you need to draw boundaries and get compliance with somebody dealing with something differently with you, you have to say it one time at the right time. And the only time that you can say it one time at the right time is to get with God and find out what's your bad in that situation, address that truth, and then let him walk you through when is the right time to say what to that individual. The power in this is that now you're not coming from a negative emotional standpoint. When you go through this process, then you're coming from a more powerful position because you're coming in love. Okay? You're coming without the emotion. You have thought this out. You've gotten along with God. You know what your game plan is. And you have to wait until that proper timing where he's prepared that person's heart to hear what you've got to say. And trust me, they hear a lot better through love than they do through anger and hurt. One time at the right time. We'll continue with investigate, interpret, and initiate. Remember, it takes more effort to gain ground than to maintain it. So we have to make sure that we are on our P's and Q's within ourselves, because you can make good progress. It takes 2 steps back when you get lazy and don't apply these principles. You have to remember to focus on the desired outcome. What is the desired outcome? The desired outcome is generally not going to have anything to do with you having to get it off your chest or dealing with anger and emotions that you haven't dealt with from the past. Remember to focus on the desired outcome. Don't take things personally. So in other words, just like we're walking through this so we can heal and get better, there's a whole bunch of other broken people out there that we're dealing with on a regular basis. And just because we decide to get our act together doesn't mean that they have. Just because we're at a time in our lives where we're ready to do better doesn't mean that they are. And just like we have these issues, so do other people. So don't take it personally. I say like this: equal opportunity knuckleheads. Okay? It got nothing to do with you. It's got everything to do with their past. And it's important to understand that every negative reaction is not about the current situation or circumstance. It can often be about yours and or somebody else's past. So remember that as you're investigating, interpreting, and initiating. Trust the process. I'll say it again, trust the process, because it's natural human behavior when something changes to have a backlash. It's sound behavioral science that when you start flipping the script on your life and you begin to heal, when you get a clearer vision and perception, then other people are going to seem so out of whack to you. You never saw it before. This didn't just start. They were like that before. You just couldn't see it. The other thing you have to remember is that once you begin this change, the people in your life, they don't know you. They know the old you. See, they're back on stage working that last script you presented, the script you've been presenting up to now. So what's going to happen in relationships is that people are going to be scrambling, treading water, trying to get a new equilibrium with you because they don't know you. So as this happens, you need to sit back, grab a cup of tea or coffee, put your feet up and say, it's working. But don't get caught up in that. Understand that this is a natural progression of the change that you are making. And remember, in consistency lies the power. In consistency lies the power. You have got to be consistent in this. Now, we're human beings. We're going to let it slip. We might trip one day. Okay? Before you know it, we're off in our script, blowing up at something, getting upset, crying, whatever it is that's your blow up or your IED. Get right back on this program. Get right back on your fruits philosophy. As you move through this process, every victory is going to make you feel stronger, and you're going to feel like, wow, if I came through that, I can come through anything. You feel powerful and strong. Enjoy that because you deserve it. But remember that it's important that you recognize that in this process, as you heal and as you apply these principles, your vision is going to clear up. God's going to start healing your heart and your soul of a lot of painful things. And as those scars heal from the inside out, instead of the butterfly bandage we've been dealing with all our lives, you will gain more discernment. Discernment is not out there somewhere, something you earn as you become level 2 saint, level 1 saint. No, it's clearly simply this. All of the pain and scars we bear in our soul are really clouding how well we hear from God. And as those heal from the inside out, they will never be able to get popped open as somebody brushes up against some issue we have, some story we haven't told, something we're stuffing, something we're holding grudges about, something we haven't forgiven, and something we haven't healed from. That can't be popped open again. But as they heal from the inside out, your discernment will automatically increase because God doesn't have to beat on the inside walls of your soul to get you to hear him. Okay? You are going to become more and more discerning. Enjoy that. Make sure that you tap into that, because in that lies the power. You're going to have to stay tuned for further instructions in every subsequent challenge. Every subsequent challenge. Understand that discernment that you're gaining, it's going to walk you through every subsequent challenge, because God will know the individual, the situation, the circumstance with which you're dealing far better than you do. And whether it makes sense or not, you have to follow the leading of the Holy Spirit as he leads you. One time he told me I was having dreams about cussing this girl out. She was so wrong. It wasn't even like two left shoes. She was wrong. And it was in me and working my nerves so tough that I had multiple dreams at night that I was just cussing her out. And I would wake up feeling good until I realized, oh my goodness, it was just a dream. And I'll never forget where I was. I was sitting on the stairs in my townhouse and just sitting there thinking, and I clearly heard the Holy Spirit say to me, yeah, you could do that and that'll make you feel better, but that's not going to do her any good. Consider the outcome in everything that you do. I didn't have another dream about cussing that girl out, and I wrestled through having to understand and see why she was the way she was and not just keep dealing and fighting the symptoms of what she was. In other words, God might want to deal with that person in a different way than the way you want to come at them. And as long as you want to come at them the way you want to come at them, then you are operating out of stolen vision all day long. What is important is how God wants to deal with them. And if he needs you in that moment as a divine connection in that person's life to deal in love instead of hurt and anger, then that's what we better be doing. Stay tuned. In closing, focus on your sphere of control. It excludes everybody but you. Imagine 3 circles. A smaller circle is encircled by a slightly larger circle, and the slightly larger circle is encircled by an even bigger circle. Your sphere of control is that small inner circle. You cannot control anything in the other 2 circles, period. You can't. Your empowerment comes from your sphere of control, which is allowing God to heal your heart from the inside out. It's in taking personal responsibilities for your choices and decisions. And it's in doing the fruit philosophy and making sure that you have a clearer vision. Only to the extent that you are in control of your inner circle will you be able to have an influence on the outer 2 circles. The inner circle is you, then the circle outside of that inner circle could be your immediate family, your immediate contacts, and that larger circle is all of the people that are along your path of purpose, people for whom you are a divine connection, and people who are a divine connection for you. You have to focus on your inner circle, which is your sphere of control. Your empowerment and influence emanates from that. Remember that healing empowers the courage to tell your stories. If you can't talk about it, you have not healed from it. And part of the process of healing, and again, it's a process. You can't get it in a prayer line. You can't get it just by praying. You have to work that thing out, let God get down deep into that gaping womb and heal it from the inside out. And as you allow that, at some point in that process, you will begin to be able to tell your stories. It's only in healing that you can do that. Get on board with this plan and trust God to be your rear guard. Get on board with it. Start working that plan. Start rewriting your life. As your vision clears, you'll have greater discernment, and you will move forward in areas in your life where you are stuck. Finally, go ahead now and rewrite your life. Thank you for joining us today. As a thank you for joining us through to the end of the webinar, we're offering you the free book, Too True to Tell, Why What We Don't Say is Leading Us Down the Path of Stolen Vision. Just go to the coaching offer page we're going to tell you about and go down to the bottom and click the link to get your copy now. Triple Threat. Vanquish the enemy with our triple threat. The triple threat includes Too True to Tell, our radio program Sister to Sister, and the book, Whose Apple Is It Anyway? Empowering purpose to achieve your God-ordained destiny. We're offering a deep discount on Who's Apple. Go to the offer page, click to the bottom to get your free ebook, a link to our radio program, and a discount on Whose Apple Is It Anyway?